Duran, and today I'm joined by
Alan Morales.
and today we're going to be talking about learning in college. So to start things off, we should talk about how college education compares to our high school education. Or not necessarily like education, but more about the learning of it, the learning aspect, and how we learn as students.
Well, the main difference that I see in college and high school is the way your teachers approach you. Like in high school, easily you get a bad grade or you're missing assignments, they will approach you and tell you what to do. But in college, they don't really do that. They just input a grade, hey, you miss an assignment, you get a 0. And if you don't go to them and see what you can do, they won't really try and help you in a way.
Yeah, because I guess at this point in our lives, it's kind of expected that we're adults, we should be doing those things. We should be being more proactive. So I see how why you would say that. Because in high school it's kind of different. The teacher, like you said, will approach you, or not all teachers would, but most of them would. And I know for college, it's just they have so many students also, they have so many things to do. They don't really have the time to be going, oh, who got what in my grade or in my class. And so students just kind of have to, or there's more expectation for students in terms of learning. You're expected to be a little bit more mature and more independent and do that on your own.
We'll also talk about the independence part. Other than learning, you also expected the way we study changes really drastically, because in high school they will tell you, hey, tomorrow is a test. There's a schedule already laid out for you, and they will remind you over and over again. In some classes, especially if you take them online in college, you don't have someone to tell you, hey, you have something due, you have a test due this day. You will actually need to be responsible enough to actually go into whatever platform they're using and look at the schedule and make time to study. Because it's not just going over the lecture and being like, oh, I'm ready. It's actually understanding it by yourself.
Yeah, that's another thing. Some students, you're paying for the class. I feel like you should go to the lecture because that's another thing. Going to lectures, I know it's harder, since sometimes in high school, attendance was mandatory. In college, not all the time. Attendance is not always mandatory. So for example, you could easily just say, oh, I don't feel like going to class anymore. But sometimes it's good if you do go to the class. That's another thing. You have I guess more freedom, but sometimes we don't utilize that freedom how we should. You know what I mean?
I know how that goes, because I know some students, even myself, the first year, I was really tempted to just skip class, because the first day my teacher told us, I'm not going to take attendance, you can skip if you want, but just keep in mind that if you miss a lecture, you might not pass, because in college, teachers go through a whole subject in a single day. A subject goes day by day, because they have to cover a lot of information in a very small window of time.
And that kind of ties in back to what you had said earlier about staying on track with the schedule, the syllabus. And so you have to be checking for your assignments, etc. And college pace is much different from high school a high school pace, because there's no classes on Friday. You have your own set time. Well, that's kind of similar to high school, honestly, the set time. But it's not every day. Some high schools have everyday classes. I know you and I had a different 8 AV days. But college is different. The pace is faster. And I know there's ways to maneuver around that. So for example, the Blackboard app, or certain apps to keep on schedule with getting your notifications on assignments that are due. So that helps a little bit, what you had said, to check things. You could just download the app so that your notifications just come straight to your phone.
Yeah, even if you don't regularly check the app, not every single day, at least check the Blackboard for 2-3 days a week. And if you don't see an assignment that the teacher told you that it was due there, you can check the syllabus, because the syllabus is there, and it helps. But yeah, that's one way to keep track of what you're doing. But another thing you need to notice that in college that we don't do really well is identifying what we're lacking. Because a lot of students are like, oh, I'm doing extremely well, but they don't see that they have a weak point on something in the way they learn.
Can you give us like your experience about that? Like what you did in terms of identifying like your weak points? Like how did you go about that, and how did you go about resolving them as well?
Well, I learned the first year really slowly that I am more of a hands-on learner. If I just hear a talk, it's gonna go through one ear at the other, and if I just see it and I don't write it down, I'm not gonna understand it really. The way I noticed that is that in my tutoring center, I actually started writing stuff down, doing the work little by little. It was harder, but I finally understood it, and I tried it in other classes, like in chemistry, even though I sit all the way to the back. I started doing the work. Like he will give us a problem, and I will write it down. He will do it by himself over there, and I will try to follow. And I started actually learning it. Because that's how I learn. I need to actually do it to understand it. I know some people. I have a friend that he can just look at a problem, see the teacher do it, he gets it, and that's fine because everyone has a different way of learning. Mine, like I said, is hands-on. If I don't do it, there's a really high chance I'm not gonna get it.
Yeah, I totally get it because I'm kind of the same way. Like I'm not very audio, more visual. So I have to see things. I have to kind of work them out a few times as well. And I think that's so important for students, especially in their first year of college, because college is so important and every like grade counts. And it's not like, oh, okay, if you mess up, you could just fix it later. It's not like that anymore. So identifying like your weak points is so important early on. So I recommend is kind of like, kind of figuring out what like how you can understand things and working on them soon, and not waiting until it starts becoming a problem and actually starts affecting your grades. Because for example, for me, I hadn't realized I was more visual until my first exam grade came out, and I was like, okay, because there's only 3 exams in this semester and there goes one. And so how did I pick that up? Oh my goodness, I managed. So that's so important that students need to like identify these weak points, whether it be like trying something new, practicing different study methods. So for example, I would write down on sticky notes, draw pictures, use flashcards, maybe watch videos. Like I know there's online videos that you could use. Well, that's what I would use too. And then just figure out something that works with you, that's efficient, and just utilize that.
Well, also that helps, like drawing stuff on different things, like also flashcards.
Yeah.
Just having a stack of them helps a lot. And another thing that I think we could mention is that the tools that I personally use to find out what I was lacking was the help that the school has, like the Learning Center. It actually helps a lot, even though I had it mandatory for chemistry because it is needed. It helps a lot. Actually showing up to the class, if it's mandatory or just by yourself. Those people are there to help you out, and they're more than willing to help you. And you can see the difference that when you just study by yourself, your grade can be okay. But if you go there, it can improve a lot.
Also, I want to ask, you know how we have discussed about like putting more time and effort into studying? What kind of advice would you recommend to students if they have, like, for example, life happens, stressful events happen, you have work. What kind of advice would you offer to students in terms of managing study time and, like, life?
Well, it's mostly what I learned. It's not that much about an advice. Is that, yes, school is very important, but also your life, like friends, hobbies, and free time, you need to balance those 4 things. But also take in consideration that you have to be willing to give up at least a little bit of time from others to keep a balance. So if you are really having a hard time in a class, maybe take some time from going out with your friends and study a little bit more, or maybe take some time from a hobby and put it into actually understanding the class. And studying is not about how much time you spend on the subject. It's actually understanding it. If you are reading something the first time you just read it and you don't get it, read it again. Just don't just go to the other one, because practically you're just reading, you're not learning. And that's something that happened to me, is that I read, but I don't learn. I just read, I'm like, okay, I get it. And then I go back again, I don't get it. So actually learn it. And whenever you can, yes, have some free time, but just keep a balance. Have your study time, family time, because that's really important. You don't want to be always in your room, and a hobby. Having something to pull you away from this helps a lot.
Especially since I know we're discussing about learning in college, I think it's so important that sometimes hobbies can help you learn in college. For example, I would go and volunteer like a clinic, and I realized that can help me in like my bio classes, or so not necessarily like hobbies, but like extracurricular can help you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also like for example research, and just like getting more involved in general in like the subject you like helps a lot. Or like learning how to apply what you're learning to other things that you enjoy helps learning a little bit more, makes learning
Easier.
yeah. So I don't know, like for me bio, like some subjects in bio like are kind of like hard for me, but then since I like chemistry a little better, I'm like tying them in, and that makes like learning easier, I suppose you could say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. Like, take a hobby that is closely tied to your career, and it will help you. And it's true. I have another friend that has it's a pharmacy major, or his career is that, and he's actually working as a pharmacist, and it's helping him in his classes because he works with that. So that helps a lot.
And what do you recommend students do to like better them, I suppose, as people, like, because for
As a
example,
person?
yeah, as like a person, like, because I feel like that also helps a lot in terms of learning, because you don't want to become overstressed or towards the end of your degree when you're running out of, like, for example, financially, like paying for college is also so important. So not necessarily a better person, but like the person you want to be, because I know college is expensive. Like, what do you recommend to students, like, to figure out what degree you want to do, what type of classes you want to take?
Well, the first semester is mainly the study or trial part of this whole thing. I recommend them to take a diversity of classes the first semester that are tied to some careers, and based on the experience they have on those classes, make a choice of what they want to do. Because I have a lot of people that I know that already are halfway through one degree, and they finally notice that that's not for them, and that's okay. You don't have to stick to a degree. Like, yes, you can be halfway done, but if you are not happy with it, it's better if you change it before you keep on going and stretch yourself more. Also, what I think is that a lot of students nowadays are pressured to pick a career already, and that's not really good for them, because even as graduates, people that already graduated, they are barely noticing that that's not the thing they want to do, and they're barely going back to school again. So what I will tell them for people is that if don't stress yourself out over picking a career. It's okay if you're not ready yet. There's a lot of adults that don't even know what they want to do yet, and they're like their 60s, 70s, and it's okay. You're gonna find out what you like, and just follow your gut. That's mainly what you should do, because if you don't follow what your instincts tell you to do, you're not gonna be happy most of the time.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times students forget that college is, well, not necessarily the main point of college, but one of the major points of college is to help you get
experience,
and also to help you get the job you want, like a career or something, whatever you want to do, prepare for your future. So that's what a lot of students tend to like lose sight of, I believe, and they forget that, oh, you're not just going to college just to make a grade. You're going to college because, for example, for me, I want to be a doctor, or I want to go into like something else, not just finish college. Oh, look, I'm done. And people tend to lose sight of that. So I feel like it's important that students pick a degree that they want, that will help them in the future. So college is essentially like a stepping stone, like one step to your main goal. And a lot of students forget that. We get so caught up in all the stress of everything and forget that college is there so that we could have a better future. For example, like a lot of my family members, a lot of them didn't go to college, and I want to have like a better future for like my family. So a lot of students, like, we lose sight of that, I suppose.
It's not only this that we lose a sight for that, is that a lot of the students are trying to fit into the degree their family want them to be.
That too.
And that's what's keeping them from actually finding out what they like. Because I know a lot of people want their kids, like parents want their kids to fulfill the things that they couldn't do. And that's something that also keeps them from growing up into the person they want to be. So they're just trying to mirror their parents. That's what I see a lot.
And what advice do you want to offer to students? Like, some final advice about that, like in terms of utilizing college, learning about college, learning about yourself in college. What type of advice would you offer first year students?
Well, it's mainly 3 or 4. One of them is don't be afraid to take risk. College is mainly the place that you can take risk without having that much backlash in a way. Take risk, join clubs, take advantage of all the tools that we have, like the learning center, the writing center, the math tutors, the academic advisors that we have, also the library service. There's a library for a reason. Go there. Just make use of all your tools that you have, and don't stress too much. You're expected to graduate in 4 years, but if it takes more than that, it's fine. As long as you get your degree, take it easy. You don't need to go stressing yourself out, and then you're not gonna be happy.
Yeah, to utilize what you have, all those resources that we have. I mean, we are kind of paying for them already.
Yeah, you're paying for it.
They say they're free, but
No.
we already know we paid for it. So yeah, utilize all your resources that you have. That'll make your learning experience in college a little bit more easier. And like you said, don't stress out too much. Everybody learns at their own pace. And I feel that's very important. People tend to forget, like, oh, my friends are doing all these things. You know, it's okay. It's okay. Just slow down sometimes.
Yeah, people learn differently.
Yeah. And so I think that was very good advice. You summarized like everything that we all learned in our first year. Thank you, Allen. And this concludes our podcast.